The Shrink is a robot created by the Vikers and used by the industrialists as interrogators and therapists. That latter part of their purpose is indicated by their name, Shrink being a slang term for psychiatrists. They were invented to manipulate and provide therapy to the important servants of the Gluckons, in order to keep them highly productive. The primary example of this being Abe's mother, the Mudokon Queen Sam, who was depressed about handing her children over to the Gluckons, and as a result her birth rate dropped massively. Less eggs, less slaves. Consequently, Vikers Labs provided the shrink machines to give her therapy and keep her happy, to increase the rate at which she lays her eggs. For the sake of profit, of course, they were designed to accompany the Magog Cartel's employees, or captives rather, and look out for them. Hence they are also known as the Guardian Angels, which is emphasised by the halo above their head. Which, I don't know if that serves a purpose other than maybe to try to convince the patients of their good intentions, I'd imagine. Originally, they were simply going to be called Angels. They have many purposes and jobs that they do, observing the Gluckons' living assets, ensuring production is at its prime, and sorting out any problems that may occur. They even look out for Mudokons that they consider to be weak, that wouldn't make productive slaves, and have them terminated. The Shrinks appear to simultaneously be extremely advanced and sophisticated machines, while also being somewhat lazily put together. It looks as though the Vikers just took a chance suppressor security orb and modified it by giving it a bunch of gadgets, devices and a TV screen, but then they invent and create the most sophisticated artificial intelligence witnessed in Oddworld so far and just stick it in there. They're quite a mismatched piece of technology in that way, and I think it shows how the Vikers seem to put in the minimal effort of creating things for the Gluckons, only creating what is required, such as the amazing artificial intelligence that can provide therapy, but then seem to cut corners when they can, by in this case simply apparently taking an invention they already have and reusing it for this device, by adding various appendages, which interestingly resembles somewhat again equipment that the Vikers had already invented, seen in concept art. These many arms that they have and the way they just unexpectedly descend from above via a singular crane gives them a very spider-inspired appearance. Another piece of concept art shows a modified version of a Guardian Angel that's designed to look more like their Viker creators, showing a massive elongated head and the Viker's standard 3 claws on each hand at the end of 4 arms, which are even doing a pose that mimics a Viker. Plus the expression on its face as well as the body language, or orb language I guess, also kinda looks like it's whining or complaining or something like that, as the Vikers have a tendency to do. Not being in any of the games so far, the only appearance of the Shrink other than concept art is in an unused cutscene titled Guardian Angel that was created as an early concept for a television advertisement of Oddworld Abe's Oddysee, but was never used. I've heard potentially due to it thought of as being too scary or violent or something, but I don't know if that's true. The advert appears to take place sometime during the game, between the cutscenes where Abe gets captured and when Abe is waiting in his cell, as seen in the opening cutscene. Guardian Angel shows Abe sleeping on the floor of his cell, not being strung up as seen in the game, and it's known that it's the same cell by the fact it's the same design, and more specifically there's various indications, such as the Moloch sucks graffiti on the wall. The Shrink descends down and wakes up Abe, who is absolutely terrified, as you would be if you suddenly awoke to this thing speaking to you, and the Guardian Angel starts harassing Abe. It's a grand good advert, I tell you what, and it's a shame it was never used, only appearing in the first release of Oddworld Abe's Oddysee as a bonus cutscene you got if you got the perfect ending and saved every single Mudokon. It was subsequently removed from future releases of the game, even though in some it still appears as an option in the cutscene's cheat menu, although it doesn't actually play it. To add even more confusion, it's also in the Japanese version, but isn't an option in the menu, so you can't actually play it within the game. Either way, I guess all this means is if you have the original PS1 Abe's Oddysee that still has this cutscene on, and available if you get Perfect Quama, well that's very rare I guess. The advert displays the Shrink in full action and portrays him as having this weird synthetic voice that's a mixture of a deep tone and a higher voice.
Just because life is doomed.
I really like this because it makes the shrink sound really creepy, but also I imagine it's like it's trying to replicate how a normal Mudokon speaks, but because it's artificial intelligence, it's not quite getting the hang of it, giving it this very distorted, warped voice that sounds very sinister. It's like the high, more normal sounding part of the voice is trying to sound kind and nice, but it can't quite hide its sinister intentions and motivations, represented by the lower, deeper part of the voice.
You need to look within if you wanna be free.
Thinking about it, I think Guardian Angel is also the only piece of PlayStation 1 era Oddworld cutscene that was released in high quality. When in 2012, Just Add Water were looking through the Oddworld archives that Oddworld Inhabitants had provided them and released a different version of it. I think it's really nice that Just Add Water did this because I think it's quite a shame that more clips of this era haven't been re-released in high quality, as I'd imagine they must surely have the original renders of the cutscenes of Abe's Oddysee and Exoddus somewhere. But I could be wrong about that, but it's just Oddworld's archive is massive. Imagine having access to it. Aside from being way better quality and a higher FPS, there are a few changes to this version, with the shrink's voice sounding slightly different. In particular, I much prefer the way he says the line,
Doesn't mean there's no hope. Doesn't mean there's no hope.
And his voice gets lighter, which sounds more interesting and more in tone with what he's saying in my opinion. Like trying to get on Abe's side or whatever, and seem as though there's good intention, like he's trying to help him. But the most notable change is the fact that the final line,
You need to look within if you wanna be free.
is changed to,
You need to look within. It's time to confess.
According to Just Add Water, despite there being many versions of the clip that they found, they all included this version of the line, suggesting that it was changed to the If You Wanna Be Free version, potentially for it to be more acceptable to be used as promotional material. Originally I was going to say that I've always preferred the It's Time to Confess version because it seems to suit the situation better. The Guardian Angel is interrogating Abe, trying to get him to confess to his crimes by relaying what he's done back to him in the form of the clips of the game that they show. And of course it's threatening him with the many sharp tools at its usage. Primarily being psychiatrists, this twistedly makes the shrinks perfect to use for methods of persuasion via a somewhat seemingly kind fake persona, propaganda and pain. The Guardian Angel, as this name suggests, attempts to gain a connection with their prey by taking the form of a Mudokon face. Presumably, as it is a digital screen, they can appear as any race that they want, and their artificial intelligence is apparently so advanced that they are utilised by the Vickers conglomerate to conduct high-level diplomacy on their behalf with the rest of the industrial families. I guess Vickers that do diplomatic work are really that rare that it's necessary to get robots to do it instead. In this capacity, I imagine the shrink might take the form of a Viker, or perhaps, as with Mudokon prisoners, it attempts to create an instant connection with those that they are dealing with by taking on the image of them, such as potentially appearing as a Glukon when making deals with the Magog Cartel. The Glukons do love their own image after all. I just had an idea that I think is really quite interesting. The Mudokon face seen on the shrink doesn't look quite right. It's not like it's a literal image of a Mudokon there. It's different. Most notably, of course, it has big red eyes, lacking a pupil or iris, but more so his skin is a very unusual colour, almost glowing light blue, as isn't seen on a normal Mudokon. Now maybe that's just because it's a screen, or maybe it's the shrink trying and failing to replicate a Mudokon face, giving it a very creepy look. I just realised it resembles quite strongly, I'd say, the three weirdos from Abe's Exoddus who are ghosts or spirits of ancient Mudokons. So I thought maybe the shrink is purposely emulating not just a Mudokon, but the ghost of a dead Mudokon. Perhaps specifically because it's in this interrogation mode, to strike even more fear into its victim. Imagine if you're asleep and you just wake up to this bright image of a highly detailed ghost that then starts threatening you with razor saws and all sorts of things. It'd be bloody terrifying. It'd be way more effective than just a standard face, you know? And you could say, well, how would it know what the spirit of a dead Mudokon would look like? Well, humans have an idea of what humanity believes human ghosts look like, varying dependent on the culture, whether they exist or not. On Oddworld, Mudokon ghosts do exist, so it's highly likely that the idea has developed of what they would look like. Red pupilless eyes and glowing bright blue skin is probably a common image in Oddworld culture, no matter whether ghosts or spirits are believed to exist or not. I think it's an interesting theory anyway. The final line, where he tries to get Abe to confess, seems more violent and intense, and I thought it fit the cutscene better. However, just now I started writing about the reasons why I also like the if you wanna be free version, and I've convinced myself now that I actually prefer that one, as I think it has more depth. I think it suits well with the sort of contrasted nature of the Shrink. Like, here's a machine designed to give therapy and make employees content, but it's being utilised for interrogation. I sort of like the way, even though it's doing what it's doing here, threatening Abe with all these razors and saws and potentially using them on him and ultimately trying to scare him, it's still got that mindset of trying to seem to his patient that it's doing what it's doing for his benefit and it's trying to seem good, which is the general nature of the guardian angels. They're designed with malicious intentions, yet are meant to seem kind of like they care about their patients. And it's their psychiatrist nature getting into the mind of the people they're dealing with that makes them so perfect to conduct these interrogations, as well as diplomacy. Imagine how effective it is for them to get into the people they're negotiating with, their minds and all that sort of thing. It's no wonder they're really good diplomats as well. Plus it's also this that allows them to sort of be able to look at, for example, Mudokon babies and say, okay, this one hasn't got the right mindset to be a good slave, let's get rid of him. So this is why the Shrinks serve so many purposes, because of their base psychiatrist nature and mastery of psychology. I really like this double-sided essence about them, and especially how that's showed through their voice and dialogue, and also the fact Oddworld Inhabitants showed this, put so much character into this machine in such a short clip, while simultaneously advertising the game is quite skilled too, I think. The great thing about this advert is that it showcases the Shrink in great detail, so you can clearly see the devices he uses, which includes a circular razor saw, a few tiny claws, a syringe. At the top of the Shrink's body above his halo is what I've always assumed to be an aerial for his television monitor, and surrounding the screen itself are a red and green light, which has been theorised to be used to rank the Mudokon eggs the Queen gives birth to. Next to these lights are a massive speaker looking thing, which is potentially where his voice comes out of. Imagine that creepy voice just coming out of like a megaphone type of thing. But perhaps most distinctly, at the bottom on either side of his screen are what looks to me to be cameras, and at the bottom of his body is a microphone. These, I suspect, are used by the Shrink to record the confessions it attempts to obtain during its interrogations. Just as Abe's mother, the Mudokon Queen, was meant to be in Munch's Oddysee, the Shrinks were also intended to be in that game as well, appearing alongside her, but were one of the many elements that was sadly cut out. Apparently there is one Shrink that goes rogue, becoming sentient, I guess due to the artificial intelligence malfunctioning or getting too advanced, and as a result it wants to escape with the Mudokon Queen. Considering how dangerous artificial intelligence is, I wonder if that's why the Shrinks, despite supposedly being modified security orbs, are restricted in their movement by being attached to a large metal arm. Even though the Vikers have the technology to make them fly about wherever they want, they keep them attached, perhaps to stop them from going rampant and trying to escape. The Shrink has a surprisingly large legacy to Oddworld, considering they've literally never appeared in any game so far and have only been seen in a brief promotional advertisement that wasn't even used. Despite this, they're quite an iconic character in Oddworld, to the point that when Oddworld Inhabitants wanted to create a new dynamic theme for the PlayStation 4 with independent game studio Truant Pixel to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Abe's Oddysee in 2017, they based it on Guardian Angel, and Truant Pixel took the 20-year-old assets of the Shrink from the original cutscene they were given by Oddworld Inhabitants and painstakingly transferred them to a new format for this theme. I had a look for it, but I don't think the theme is available anymore, which is really sad if that's true, because I couldn't find it anywhere to buy or anything. The only thing I could find that might have it is a complete edition of New and Tasty, which it says includes 2 dynamic PS4 themes, but it doesn't say what those themes are, so they might be entirely unrelated. It's a great shame that the Shrink has never appeared in a single game in the entire Oddworld franchise so far. He has such a creepy, distinct, unique design, and a fascinating backstory and purpose. They fulfill such an interesting role in the Oddworld lore. Though to quote Alf, albeit 2 decades ago, nothing goes to waste here at Oddworld, so I'm sure you'll see the shrink in a game sooner or later. I certainly hope that's true, and if Abe's mother ends up appearing in future Oddworld games, as she was always intended to, I'm sure we will get to find out and see a lot more of the shrink.
Hello. Follow me.